Well, guess what? Kyle Rittenhouse has filed a counterclaim against Gaige Grosskreutz. So it's going to be Mark Richards versus Kimberly Motely. Oh no. Yeah, this is going to be bad. Now, keep in mind, I'm not sure that Kyle has a great chance because I can see some pretty, clear arguments in Gaige's favor in a way. But certainly Gaige is not going to win on the strength of his legal representation. All right, so I'm going to read the counterclaims. I'm just going to kind of gloss over it for this video. I just want to let everybody know that Kyle is countersuing Gaige Grosskreutz. So I'm just going to kind of gloss over this in the first video here, just to kind of give you an idea of what's in here. So, hello out there. I am trying to get through.
With his powerful brainwaves cradled in the warmth of reasoning, it's time for Johnny Walker Dredd to straighten you out on a thing or two. Emanating all the way from exciting Las Vegas, Oklahoma, it's the Johnny Walker Dredd Show.
Kyle sent me this actually, and I responded back to him saying that, I'm just not sure about your chances. But then I didn't realize that Mark Richards was actually representing him on this countersuit. In which case, if it's Mark Richards, I kind of get the feeling that Kyle might have a better chance than I originally thought. And the reason is because I don't think Mark Richards would have pushed on this if he didn't think that Kyle had a good chance at it. He doesn't come across as a schemer. So I have a feeling that Mark Richards, being a fairly sharp guy, actually does truly believe that Kyle can win this. Now, I have a bigger problem, and that is I don't think there's much chance of ever actually getting any money from Gaige. Okay, he will never amount to anything. And so he will never accumulate any kind of wealth for which I think that this lawsuit would make this worth it. I mean, I don't think that Kyle would ever recover the amount of money he's going to pay Richards to actually do this. But whatever, not my problem. So at any rate, Kyle, I wouldn't go and put any down payments on new Lamborghinis even if you win this lawsuit, because I have a feeling you're not going to get a dime out of Gaige. He will never have a dime. Okay. So let's go ahead and read the counterclaims here. And by the way, this counterclaim is filed in the same suit that Kimberly Motely submitted to the courts. So it's in the same document. It's appended to the end of it. All right. And it says here, the defendant and counterplaintiff Kyle Rittenhouse, by and through his attorneys, Richards and Associates, hereby asserts the following counterclaims against plaintiff and counterdefendant Gaige Grosskreutz. So in here, Kyle is telling his side of the story. And I'm actually going to read this in a follow-up video, but I just kind of want to get to the guts of the matter tonight. Okay, so why is Kyle suing? Count one, he's making a claim that Gaige Grosskreutz assaulted him. All right. And whether Gaige Grosskreutz did kind of depends on who you believe, right? So here it says, in the manner described in this counterclaim, counter-defendant Grosskreutz committed unlawful conduct by carrying a concealed weapon without a valid license, which is rather interesting. There's been some talk lately that Gaige Grosskreutz was actually legally allowed to carry that gun. But if that's the case, it got by Mark Richards, who I would think would know. And I don't think that Mark Richards is the kind of person that would put something blatantly untrue in a suit. So I would suggest that, as far as I can tell here, it still looks like Gaige Grosskreutz was not legally allowed to carry the gun that night. Now, as far as a self-defense claim, it doesn't make any difference. I mean, you can protect your life with an illegal weapon just as much as any others. I mean, you might still face gun charges for it, but it doesn't negate your self-defense claim. However, in a civil case, the jury might be kind of swayed by that. Kyle was deemed legally in possession, although jurors might disagree. Even though the court did rule that, they might disagree with that interpretation. But Gaige Grosskreutz isn't going to be looking too good on that front. And it goes on. He was running up on counterplaintiff Rittenhouse with his weapon drawn as Rittenhouse lay on the ground, feigning surrender, pointing a loaded pistol at Rittenhouse's head and moving in for the kill. Richards is coming out and saying it. Gaige Grosskreutz meant to kill Kyle Rittenhouse that night. Do I believe that? I don't know. Frankly, I don't think so. But whatever the case, it doesn't matter what I think. And I know a lot of you are going to be all pissed off at me, for making the claim, but I'm going to go by my gut instincts on this, and I'm trying to be as unbiased and fair as I can. And so I'm going to come out and say it. I don't think that Gaige Grosskreutz was really aiming to shoot Kyle that night. However, he might have. I mean, I can't prove it one way or the other. By running up on counterplaintiff Mr. Rittenhouse with his weapon drawn as Rittenhouse lay on the ground, feigning surrender, pointing a loaded pistol at Mr. Rittenhouse's head, and moving in for the kill, I think we've already heard that, counter-defendant Grosskreutz placed Mr. Rittenhouse in a reasonable apprehension of imminent and harmful contact. Okay, that I can go along with. Counter-defendant Grosskreutz intended to place Mr. Rittenhouse in apprehension of imminent and harmful contact by attempting to execute him. Okay, so Richards is coming out and saying that Grosskreutz actually tried to kill Kyle that night. It's up to the jury to decide, based on the evidence, what they feel. And again, it's going to come down to plurality. So if you can get the majority of the jury to believe that Grosskreutz was up to no good, then you might win this. The misconduct described in this count was intentional and undertaken with malice, willfulness, and reckless indifference to the rights of Mr. Rittenhouse. As a result of these actions, counterplaintiff Rittenhouse suffered severe injuries, including emotional distress. Now, Kyle can actually verify that, okay? Remember the PTSD deal. He'll get a note from the psychiatrist. Count 2, intentional infliction of emotional distress. In the manner described in this counterclaim, counter-defendant Grosskreutz engaged in extreme and outrageous conduct. Counter-defendant Grosskreutz's actions set forth above were undertaken with intent or knowledge that there was a high probability that the conduct would inflict serious, severe emotional distress and physical injury, and with reckless disregard of that probability. Counter-defendant Grosskreuz's actions set forth above were undertaken with malice, willfulness, and reckless indifference. And then finally, we have negligent infliction of emotional distress. And it reads pretty much like the others. And so he's asking for relief, money. And why? Well, he's claiming economic losses, compensatory and consequential damages, including damages for emotional distress, loss of enjoyment of life, and other pain and suffering on all claims allowed by law, okay? Punitive damages on all claims allowed by law in an amount to be determined at trial. Attorney's fees and costs associated with this action. Pre-judgment and post-judgment interest at the lawful rate. Any other appropriate relief at law and equity that this court deems just and proper. And by the way, we have Mark Richards here acting on behalf of Kyle, but also Natalie Wisco. And some of you know Natalie because she's on Twitter quite a bit. So, you know what? If you have an inkling to ask her any questions, you know how to get a hold of her. She's involved in this. Now, keep in mind, she's probably not going to be very talkative. Stay tuned. There's a lot here, including his answers to Gaige Grosskreuz's claims. So over the next week or so, I'm going to be doing some videos on this, and we'll get to the bottom. And by the way, Kyle's claims are rather interesting. Some things have manifested that I was not aware of. So stay tuned for more. Like my video and subscribe to my channel.